Hello, Music Fundamentals class. Today we're going to be talking about scales, in particular the major scale. What a scale is, it's a particular pattern of half and whole steps. You can think about half and whole steps as far as the keys on the piano, but basically a half step is really the smallest interval or the smallest difference between two notes that we have. So on the piano, here's what a major scale is, and then I'm going to tell you and show you exactly what those half and whole steps are. Here is the C major scale. So you'll see, I went from middle C up to the next C. C major scale happens to be the one scale in the major category where we only are playing the white piano keys. And it sounds like, if you've ever seen The Sound of Music, and you will be watching that video later on, but it sounds like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And up here, that's what we call the octave, from the first C to the next C. So within that major scale, we have what I said was half and whole steps. And again, a half step is the smallest difference between two notes. It's either from a white key to the very next black key, or from the black key to the very next white key. It's always the very next key. There's not really a note in between. Now, someone might accidentally play a note in between or sing it like C. It's kind of in between there somewhere, but that's really a quarter tone, which other cultures might have. We just don't have that particular interval in our system of music. You'll notice between E and F, as we talked about in chapter 1 and 2, between E and F and B and C, there is not a black key in between. So between those two white keys, either B, C, or E and F, those are still half steps. To make a whole step, you just take two half steps. So from C, you would not just go to C sharp, because that'd be a half step. You would then go one more half step. So from C to D is another whole step. We're going to talk about that more specifically, and I'm going to show you on a larger diagram of piano keys the difference between half and whole steps, but I wanted to start us off at the piano so you could actually see and hear our acoustic instrument. Let's look more specifically at half and whole steps. If you look at my diagram of the piano, you'll see that we have an arrow between the C white key and the C sharp black key. Since those two keys are right next to each other, that is considered to be a half step. Another half step would be if we started on that C sharp and went to the next white key. Now it's written in, but hopefully you know that that next key is a D. From E to F, remember, there's no black key in between. So from that white key E to that white key F, that is a half step, because again, those two keys are right next to each other. Same thing here. From B, if we go backwards, that's a half step going down. So from B, the white key B, we go to the next key to the left, which is next door to it. That takes us to a B flat, so that becomes a half step as well. To make a whole step, you just do two half steps. So a half step plus one more half step is a whole step. You always can think too that when there's a whole step, there's usually one key in between. So from C to what would be this D right here, that would be a whole step, and in between we have that black key right there. So again, let's just practice doing some whole steps. So if we started from this E and we needed to go a whole step, where would we go and what note would we be on the piano? And then you can then translate and think where would that be on the staff. If I start on E and I needed to go up a whole step, I'm going to go half, half. So what's that going to be? F sharp. And we'd go ahead and call it an F sharp rather than a G flat, since we're talking about a whole step. If we started on G, which would be this note right here that's after F, and I wanted to go up a whole step, what would I do? I would go bloop, bloop. So that would take me to, what letter would that be? That would be an A. Let's do a whole step from, how about from C sharp actually? So if we started on C sharp and had to go up a whole step, I would go half, half, and what letter would I be on? That would be D sharp right there. So I hope that's very clear to you, the difference between half step and steps and whole steps. All right, today we're going to talk about a specific scale, that being the major scale. And remember, a scale is just a specific pattern of half and whole steps. Another word for that is a diatonic scale. A diatonic scale is half and whole steps more specifically, the major scale pattern is what we're going to be learning today. So a major scale pattern, here is what it is. And I'm going to write the numbers 1 through 8 on the board with those numbers representing the scale degrees. So if I'm writing down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I'm thinking about the key of C, the scale degree number 1 is my C. Then we just go up in order of the alphabet. E, F would be 4, G. After G, remember we start over with A, B, C. We always start and end on the same note. So in between scale degrees 1 and 2, we have a whole step. And that's whole spelled with a W, W-H-O-L-E, not the other whole. In between scale degrees 2 and 3, in between that D and E, it's another whole step. So I was just playing C, I played D, I played E. Now, in between E and F in the C major scale, we have a half step. Put a lowercase h, because that'll remind you that it's a smaller step. In between E and F, that's what I played. I played plain E and plain F. Between F and G, we have another whole step. Between G and A, we have another whole step. A and B, 6th and 7th scale degree, is another whole step. Between B and C, between the 7th and 8th scale degree of any major scale, it's always a half step. Now, I was telling you this is the pattern for C major. It's the pattern for any major scale, no matter what letter you start on, no matter whether you start on a white key or a black key. If you follow this pattern and play all the rest of the keys in that order, you're going to have the sound of the major scale, that being do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Those are the notes that make up the major scale, and that's the sound of the major scale. In other cultures, their scales might sound different, and in the next chapter, we'll learn minor scales, which sound a little bit sad. But the major scale is made up of those particular pitches in that particular order. They kind of usually have a happy sound. Composers you can think of as using these notes kind of like their word bank to create their sentence, to create their paragraph. So if someone wanted to write a song in C major, they would use these notes if they were going to stick strictly within that C major scale. Now, of course, a composer has some creative liberty. They might choose to put a sharp or put a flat on one of those notes. If they did, those are notes that are actually outside of the major scale. These exact notes are the C major scale. So again, this is the pattern for any major scale. A sentence to remember is, we walked home when we walked home. If you can memorize that sentence, you can apply this toward any scale.